How many of you have ever done an event, something like this, where it was an act of trust and it didn't work out very well for you? Anybody? Anybody ever say, hey, somebody said, trust me, and it didn't happen well? I mean, whatever happened, it actually maybe even put inside of you this fear of, I don't know that I can trust again. Huh? Anybody ever have betrayal of trust? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah. Don't live there. Trust again. Really, trust again. Get someplace where you can engage someone again. It's interesting. I don't know what it is about it. I remember back when I was a kid, and things that even we do to each other, parents do to children. And we think it's funny. You know, like I'm going to play. I'm walking by the pool, right? And I'm walking by. My dad's walking next to me, and he just shoves me. And then he laughs, and I go in the water. Of course, I'm not injured, but
not on the outside.
Not on the outside. Very good. Not on the outside. But on the inside, I'm going, man, I don't know if I should walk next to my dad next time when we're walking by the pool. Do you ever have instances where things happen and then people laugh because they think it's funny, but actually what we're doing is we're actually embedding into one another that you can't trust. Remember, I was working in it years ago, Smitty's Automotive, before I entered ministry. This ministry for me is kind of a second career, but our family had an automotive everything kind of thing back in Toledo, Ohio. And I remember I was in the shop one day, and a guy was sharpening his screwdriver because he had broken the tip off, so he was sharpening it on a stone wheel, and it was blue hot as he was sharpening that blade, the screwdriver blade again. And I walked by him, sparks are flying, and I'm kind of watching that. He turns over and he takes the screwdriver and he touches it on the back of my hand. It burns my hand. He starts laughing. I'm an adult. And he says, don't trust nobody, not even your papa. And he was joking. And I thought to myself, jerk! What are you thinking? I mean, that was stupid. My hand blistered up. I was angry. I remember a time when I was, my uncle, here's a weird name for you, Cleston, my Uncle Cleston. Loved him. He was a great man. I remember teasing him one day, and I said, come here, let me read your palm, kind of a thing, as a kid, and he lets me, brings his hand out, and I look at his hand, I said, oh, I don't know anything about this kind of palm reading thing, but I was just playing with him, and I said, oh, this line says you're about to get slapped in the face, and I went crack across the face. This is my uncle. I'm a kid. I scratched, and he looked at me, and I knew I crossed the line. He walked away. Later on that summer, I pulled in to the shop, and he was there visiting my dad, but it was my birthday. I didn't get out of the car. He pulled me out of the car by my hair and gave me my birthday spanking. And it really was a birthday spanking. The relationships that we have, and we have relationships with people, and there should be relationships of trust. But we create relationships, and in these relationships, we do things to each other, and we do them sometimes we hurt each other and we don't mean to. Sometimes we hurt each other and we mean to. Sometimes we're just thinking it's fun. Like in my family, where fun always seemed to it always ended up someone was hurt by the time we were done with the fun. Now in my family, I would not say that those who hurt me are my enemy. It would be much easier for me to say to those outside of my family, oh, those who hurt me are my enemy. But to say it of my family, I mean, that's maybe too strong of language to say if you hurt me and you're my brother, or you're my sister, or you're my mom or dad, or you're even my children, my cousins, my uncles. It would be much more, it's too strong of word to say enemy. But we've been talking about enemy. We've been talking about redefining enemy. We've been talking about how do we see each other? Is it even right for someone who says that we follow Jesus to name someone as our enemy? Now I understand that there's two different ways of saying this. One is that I take a position of being someone's enemy, and then there's another aspect where someone may take a position against me as my enemy. You understand those two? I'm not in control of what other people do. If they position themselves against me as an enemy, I'm not in control of that. But what I am in control of is whether or not I will ever position myself against someone else as an enemy. Luke 6:27 through 31, and then a couple other verses after that, 35 and 36, says this. Jesus is talking, and he says, I say to you who hear, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you, like my Uncle Cleston. Not that I didn't deserve, even that's an interesting way to say that. But whoever hits you on the cheek, offer him the other also. And whoever takes away your coat, do not withhold your shirt from him either. Give to everyone who asks of you, and whoever takes away what is yours, do not demand it back. Treat others the same way you want them to treat you, but love your enemies, and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you will be the sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil men. So be merciful just as your Father is merciful. We've talked about this verse over these last few weeks as we've pressed into this idea of redefining the idea of enemy from God's perspective. You see, I don't believe that God has an enemy. I do believe people position themselves against God, and they make themselves God's enemy. But from God's point of view, he makes no one his enemy. We talked, if you want to know more, you can go back into our webcast and look and pick up some of the teachings that we did a few weeks ago on this. But this idea of enemy, what happens inside of this enemy language, this is what I want to deal with today, because I've been taught, and I don't know if you've been taught, but I've been taught to create a boundary between my enemy and me. I've been taught to protect myself from my enemy. But if as followers of Jesus Christ, we have no enemy. In fact, if you go back to that Luke passage, it's interesting because Jesus is actually saying there that if someone slaps you, if someone takes from you, actually act as if they didn't do it. Actually, go ahead and give. If they take your coat, give them some more. Actually, work in the opposite direction. If they hit your cheek, turn the other cheek to them as if the one cheek didn't even take place. Give to those and everyone who asks you. Whoever takes away what's yours, don't demand it back and act as if it didn't happen. Treat others the same way you want them to treat you. But he says, love your enemies. Do good and lend to them. You say, how can you do that? How can you posture yourself towards someone who is wanting to hurt you? How do I get over the next time I see my Uncle Cleston and me worrying about whether or not he's going to grab a hold of me again and hurt me and laugh, thinking it's funny? See, I've been taught to use boundaries to protect myself from people like that. Haven't you? What if, though? What if we could look at the idea of boundaries and look at it a little bit differently? Instead of me looking at it from a fear perspective, which we've often looked at boundaries through, right? I want to create a boundary because I'm afraid. I want to create a barrier between you and me, between that which is hurtful and me. What if instead of looking at boundaries from a fear perspective, we actually looked at boundaries from a love perspective? We shifted the lens. We'll take the focus off of the fear lens, and we'll put on the love lens. See, for the follower of Jesus, boundaries are to protect what is valuable, not to protect what we're afraid of. Not to protect us from what we're afraid of. Does that make sense? As a follower of Jesus, from the kingdom of heaven, is there any fear in heaven? Anybody? No fear in heaven, all right? So boundaries are not created to protect from what we're afraid of from heaven's point of view. Boundaries are given to protect what's valuable, what's precious, what's honored, what's loved. See, every Jesus follower carries in them the awareness, the capacity for awareness, that love, let me say it a different way. Every Jesus follower carries in them an awareness of love. As we access this awareness of love, we discover that in love there is no fear. We discover that as we move towards love, that we actually are becoming more fearless. That actually, I'm not finding ways to separate myself from you. I'm finding ways to engage you. As followers of Jesus, begin to understand the heart of God, we begin to know what He knows, believe what He believes. Our faith becomes His faith, right? Some months ago we talked about faith as two different ways. Often we use the word faith as a verb, like if I can believe enough, right? Versus faith as a noun. Faith as a noun is the faith that God is looking at me. When God looks at me and He's looking for our faith, He's not looking for you. He's not looking to see how much energy you can muster to believe. He's looking to see if you carry His faith. What He believes to be true. What He knows to be true. See, what He knows to be true is a noun. It's an object that we approach. Are you with me? Are you good? So the faith of God is the faith that we carry. We carry the faith of God. Where we get twisted is when we get into this place of well, how much do I believe in that or not? You understand that as a follower of Jesus, Jesus understood something. He knew who God was. He believed what God believed. He had the faith of God. And when God looks at you, He sees the faith. He has associated you in Christ. And so you have, from His perspective, you have the faith of God. That's what He's looking at. He's looking at not your capacity, whether you can believe enough, but He sees you and Christ as fused together. Francis du Toit says this: faith is not blind, neither is it unconscious. Faith knows. Faith isn't something that I'm working towards. Faith, it is or it isn't. Right? I either know it or I'm somewhere before knowing it. I'm pre-knowing it. He says this too. He says, faith knows the truth about you. Faith is to agree with God about you. Because faith knows the truth about someone, faith anticipates and encourages positive change with patience. Faith ignites the energy for change and growth. God's faith in the finished work of Christ awakens faith in us to no longer tolerate anything in our minds, our moods, our bodies, or our circumstances that is inconsistent with our original design. Even old habits are challenged. Negative, genetically transmitted traits lose their hold. Faith creates the environment for radical and permanent change. Excuse me. Faith is what God knows to be true about you. Remember when I talked about, I said every Jesus follower carries in them the awareness. We have this capacity for awareness. I think often what we struggle with is whether our eyes are open or closed. In you is the faith of God. It's the movement that we seem to be feeling is our awakening or our awareness of it. It's the process of owning it, ownership of it, taking ownership of it. You understand? See, for the follower of Jesus, circumstance does not dictate to us who we are or what we do. The Father's heart dictates that to us. Circumstance does not. You say, Brent, I understand that, but when someone's going to hurt me, if someone's hurt me in the past, I got to create a boundary between them and me because I don't want to be hurt again. And you know what? There's some truth there. I totally understand that we want to protect ourselves from being hurt. But as long as I'm in the posture of protecting myself from being hurt, I'm in a fear-based posture. I'm not in a love-based posture. Love-based postures lean towards, I'm coming toward you. In fact, what I'm looking for something that's so valuable in you, I want to protect it. Let me work through a logic piece here for you. See, for the follower of Jesus, every person is loved. Every person is loved. There is no enemy to the follower of Jesus in a person. For the follower of Jesus, every person is loved. So then, if every person is loved, there is no person that you fear. Now work this with me. Okay, work this process with me. Because people are not feared, every person then is now free because there's no need for you to control them. Because you only need to control someone is because you're afraid of them, right? Let me work one more step and we'll back up and do a little bit of review. So because every person is now free, they're able to choose. And they're able to use the power of self-control that has been given to them by their God. That they're able to choose what they will do or not do. And if you're in perfect control of you, then you don't need to be in perfect control of them. If you're in perfect control of you, you can let them be in control of them. And you can be in control of you. Because everyone can choose. Now everyone has power over themselves. The problem is when someone mismanages their power. Would you agree? When someone mismanages their power, that's where hurt can come in. When someone mismanages their choice, their ability to choose, their self-control, when they mismanage that by not taking your heart into account, that's where tension is created, and that's where fear is conceived. So you say, well, Brent, yeah, but what if someone chooses to be my enemy? What if someone chooses to posture themselves against me? And even, I don't want them to, but what if they choose to posture themselves against me, even to the point of hurting me? What am I supposed to do? Because I know that's probably what you're asking, right? Because, Brent, come on, you say I can't set up a boundary, but I got to protect myself. So somebody can do that intentionally, somebody can do something unintentionally. The point being is, fear is at the door. And what are you going to do with fear? See, for the follower of Jesus sees a person struggle, but we also see, we're engaging in that tension, we're engaging in the struggle, but we see them, we see the circumstance through the Father's perspective. And we see that every person is powerful, and people do have the capacity to be self-focused. People do have the capacity to not care about your heart, which can hurt you. But here's what powerful people do. Powerful people state what they will do. Powerful people don't state what you will do. Powerful people state what I will do. If I'm a powerful person, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. If I'm a controlling person, if I'm fearful, I will tell you what to do. But if I'm powerful, I will say what I will do. Paul talks about this in Philippians 1:21. He says this, he says, "For to me, to live is Christ and to die is gain. But if I am to live on in the flesh, this will mean fruitful labor for me. And I do not know which to choose. But I am hard-pressed from both directions, having the desire to depart and be with Christ, for that is very much better. Yet to remain on in the flesh is more necessary for your sake. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you for all your progress and joy in the faith, so that your proud confidence in me may abound in Christ Jesus through my coming to you again. Only conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or remain absent, I will hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel, in no way alarmed by your opponents, which is a sign of destruction for them, but of salvation for you, and that too from God." So here's the deal. Our focus has to shift from what we're afraid of to what we're in love with. For the follower of Christ, we have to shift the language from what we're afraid of to what we're in love with. I hope you're getting this. Can you say that? Okay. For the follower of Christ, we have to shift our language from what we're afraid of to what we're in love with. From what we're afraid of to what we're in love with. Say it. From what we're afraid of to what we're in love with. You see, the language on the planet, the language of earth, seems to have this focus on what we're afraid of. And it's telling us we got to protect, we got to control. Yeah, and it makes total sense in a fear-based culture. It makes total sense. But in a love-based culture, where there is no fear, where love displaces fear, now how do I deal with circumstances that create momentum against my life that I don't like? Paul finds himself in prison. He finds himself in prison at the hand of others. I don't think it was his desire to be there. I think he would have rather been somewhere else than a stinky, dungy prison. But while he's there, what's he doing? he's singing, he's worshiping. And he's making comments like that. You know, for me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. You know, worst thing you can do to me is kill me. So how's that going to work out for me? Not too bad of a deal, because if you kill me, I'm with Christ and my heart is there, but yet my heart's with you too. Circumstance. Paul had, I don't know if you use this word, but Paul had transcended fear. He had gotten out of the fear thing. He had gotten back into waiting. What's most valuable for me? What's more valuable? What do I love more? His focus was shifting over to what he loved. It's interesting. There's another verse in John 21. And I'm just pulling this. I'm pulling this verse out. I could be using this out of context, but that's pretty dangerous to do. But I want to use this verse. I don't want to talk about anything that's around it. I just want to talk about the verse itself. In John 21:22, Jesus is talking. He says, if I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? Follow me. It was almost like Jesus was just kind of to the chase. He was talking to his disciples, and he was talking about John, and the other disciples were talking. He was talking about, John, if I want him to remain until I come back, that kind of thing. And people were thinking, as they were listening, they thinking, well, John, he's going to live forever, kind of a thing. And they were kind of doing the whole comparison thing and saying, yeah, but what about us? And Jesus just kind of said, hey, if I want this, what's that to you? You decide. You choose. What are you going to do? Are you going to follow me or you're not going to follow me? This verse, what is that to you? I think we get caught up in things that we're comparing. We're looking over here, we're looking over there, we're looking at this person, looking at that person, and we're trying to figure out what we should do compared upon what other people should do. Throw that away. What is this to you? For you, are you going to be a person that's going to choose to live under the influence of fear, or will you choose to live under the influence of love? What will it be? What will it be? See, we don't create boundaries. As followers of Jesus, we don't create boundaries out of fear or to protect from what I'm afraid of. But I do create boundaries to elevate what is more important to me, what is more valuable to me. That's why I create a boundary. Now, it might feel like a boundary of separation from the one being affected by your choice. When you discern to say, hey, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do in this situation. This just took place to me. This just took place. This made me feel these ways. My value is for what this is. And because of my value for here, for whatever that is that I establish value, I'm going to set some boundaries because I want to elevate that and protect that. This is important to me. Is that important to you? This might not be important to the other person, but it's important to you. Will they honor that? Will they choose that? Well, that's up to them. That's their power. They can choose that. Whatever. They can choose to honor this or not honor this. That's up to them. But the reason you're creating the boundary here is you're elevating this value. This is important to me. I want this to be important to you, but it doesn't have to be. See, the reality is that some things have higher value than other things. Sometimes we just need to get over if someone doesn't place the value we place on something the way we want them to. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. You don't have to begin to defend yourself or back up or get yourself on your heels in relationship with someone because they're choosing not to honor that. You are continuing. What is that to you? You pick it up, honor that. You continue to elevate and honor that which you've placed value on. See, to expect that, to expect someone to value something that you put value in, to expect that of them, I think it can be, at the least, it's presumptuous on your part. They might not be there. They might not understand. But part of the journey of relationship is that through relationship and connection, they may be able to begin to find the value that you have on that. Does this make sense? How does Jesus do boundaries? I mean, look at Jesus. How does he do boundaries? He invites people. He invites them closer. Hey, come closer. I want you to see what I see. Come here. I want you to see what I see, right? And then he lets people make their own decision whether they want that, do that or not. Multiple stories in Scripture. He lets them make the decision on whether they're going to do that or not. And this is what Jesus does. He states what he's going to do. He states what he's going to do in the midst of whatever they're going to choose to do. He doesn't determine what they're going to do. He doesn't require them to do it. He just states what he's going to do. So he comes and he says, hey, let me invite you to see what I see. Let me invite you. I want to show you something about what I hold valuable. And what are you going to do with that? So make your decision. I know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to continue to make this valuable and to show the value of this in my life. See, boundaries, from heaven's perspective, I believe, protect that which is important. Boundaries are not made to separate. Boundaries actually become invitation points. Places to connect. See, whether someone chooses to value what you value is up to them. It really is. And I know where we go. Well, we want them to value what I value. I understand. But that's not up to you. When you try to make that about you, you move into a place of fear. You move into a place of operation from fear, and control starts to come in. See, separation is never the choice of the believer. Separation is never the choice of the follower of Jesus. Separation is never in the heart of God. God separates himself from no one. He never did. But fear rises up inside of us. Fear is what creates separation. Fear creates this illusion of separation. It's not even an illusion, it's a reality. It creates the illusion that the other is moving away from me when the other has never changed. We're the ones that have moved, because that's what fear does. Fear moves me away from you. Fear puts me into self-protection mode. Fear moves me into creating a boundary to keep you out. Separation is not the choice of you. You are not the one that chooses separation. Not the one filled with love. Love doesn't separate itself. Not the one filled with goodness. Goodness never stops its flow. See, this is who you are. Because you've been fused with the nature of God. Where love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control they're just natural attributes of who you are. That's who you are. Now, whether the other will join you or whether the other will separate from you, what is that to you? It's up to them. They're in control of that. And their choice may hurt you. Their choice may bother you. Their choice may disappoint you. Because your hope was that they would choose to value what you value. But if they don't, that's not up to you. See, love always chooses connection, not distance. Love always is an invitation for more. If your concept of love chooses distance, it's not the love Jesus talks about. Because Jesus always chooses connection. But he leaves the choice for connection up to the other, whether they want to reciprocate that or not. See, love says this. Love always says what I'm going to do. Love says what I'm going to do. Because love's not afraid of what you will do. Love has no fear in it whatsoever. Now, the information I give to you will help determine what you will do. Now that you have more information, now you can choose. What you choose is up to you. And when you choose my heart, when you choose what I find valuable, guess what happens to relationship? It grows. When I reveal to you what's most valuable to me, and you come along and you share that with me, guess what we're doing? We're building intimacy. But if I show you what's valuable to me and you choose not to share that with me, it doesn't mean I disconnect from you. It doesn't mean I move to fear. It doesn't mean that I got to control you. I let you choose. You're powerful. I let you choose to discover your power, to live in your power. And you will discover, hopefully, that in the midst of that, hey, we're missing something. We're missing intimacy. Well, I wonder why we're missing that. And if there's relationship, then potentially there is the capacity for an honoring of each other's values. Does that make sense to you guys? The information I give to you helps to determine what you will do, but I'm not in charge of what you will do. You are. It's one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. It's actually part of the character of God in you. That you have the power to choose. Some people say, this whole free will thing, right? Well, is God really in control if you're the one that's making the choice? Those kinds of conversations that happen out there. But you understand when it talks about humanity's perception of God being in control has been skewed over the years, and we think that God being in control means He's in control of you. But you understand that that's totally opposite how the kingdom works. Because the kingdom works not through control, but through invitation. When God is in control, really, it's a very, very true statement. God is in control. But what is He in control of? He's in perfect control of Himself. No one else can control Him. And He wants you to look just like Him. In perfect control of yourself. That's why self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Now, if a person or environment is not going to value you, and what you've told them about you, guess who's in control of you? You. You can still say, this is what I will do. And that's power. In extreme cases, sometimes in relationships or circumstances, our life can be threatened and someone may move to control you or your body and you're unable to remove yourself, like in Paul's situation when he's confined in prison. I mean, these are extreme cases. These are not the norm. But even there, love wins. Even there, love wins. Because your situation does not determine who you are. Your Father in heaven determines who you are. And for Paul, physical death, even, the extreme, where we can get into such a traumatic experience that even death is maybe even the result, that's not even a barrier for you. It's not even a barrier. Though uncomfortable it may be. So in the midst of this, and then we'll finish up, the idea of enemy language has to leave. You understand that the only enemy that's legal, I don't know if I like to go into legalities with Christianity, but let me just use it as a metaphor right now, just work with me, but the only enemy language that's legal is when we label the lie that's been said against us, that we would think of ourselves in a lesser way than God thinks about us. That is an enemy. That is our enemy. The enemy really is deception. It's the lie that's being propagated against humanity to diminish our identity. That's the lie. The enemy is not a person. The enemy is not, I'm not going to assign language. I'm not going to position myself against anyone. Love positions itself against no one. When we use the word enemy, we actually are using we're actually using a modifier, a descriptor that actually is language of. It's not language that comes from God. Enemy language creates boundary language in all the wrong ways. Thoughts of enemies moves us to fear and control and self-protection, and let's just get rid of it. Let's just get rid of it. If we're going to use the word enemy at all, which if you're bound and determined to keep the language, then call the enemy the lie that is working, that is set to work against us. That's our enemy. The lie that's set to work against us. Just a couple of things and we're done. The only enemy I have is the one God has. And the one God has is called sin. And sin, from our descriptions as we have worked through this, sin is a wrong thought that I have about God, which is a lie, right? We don't define sin as behavior. We understand the fruit of sin can be behavior. But ultimately, behavior comes from a belief system, and a belief system comes from thoughts believed. And so when I have sinful actions in my life, my actions are actions that are produced because I have a wrong thought about God. Are you with me? Pretty simple in the sin thing. But God has set himself against sin. He set himself against the lie that wants to diminish us. Here's a couple of quotes from a guy named John. He says this: God hates sin not because his own personal holiness was impugned. He hates it because of the way it hurts us, spiraling us into shame and insecurity and rejection, pulling away from relationship in fear. Another paragraph, he said, sin has caused separation only in that it has blinded us and deafened us to the sweet truth of who God really is. God is not the deaf one. God is not the blind one. It is sin that's blinded us. Separation is an illusion, a figment of our fallen imagination, that we could run and hide from a God who is everywhere. God's wrath has nothing to do with hating us or being ill-tempered to us. It has to do with hating the sinfulness that's eating us like a disease. You see, God has set a boundary. He has elevated what he holds most valuable. And he's elevated us up and he says, I love you guys. See what's most valuable to me? Look at humanity, that which I've created in my own image. These I love. I love my children. And I hate anything. And I've set a boundary against anything that will come to diminish them. And the cross was ultimately about adoption and deliverance from this molesting evil of sin. He came to violently cleanse us of everything that defiled us. He stepped into our estrangement, our brokenness, our false humanity, destroying our sickness and our poverty. Where sin had perverted and marred our true and original identity in him, he recaptured the lost coin that still bore his image. See, whether you look like it or not, you are a son and a daughter of God. You bear his image. It's your awareness of it that's growing. So let's put away enemy language. What do you say? Let's put it away. Let's put away what I'm going to set a boundary against, and let's move towards what I'm going to love. I want to show you what I love most, not what I fear most. What do you say? Do you think the church would be better off if we did that? Do you think our message in the community that we live in would be better off if we stopped talking about what we're afraid of and start talking about what we're in love with? I think so. Okay. You good?